Let's get this meeting started. It's 5:04. Welcome, everybody. I think the first thing that we will do, well, let's see who, I don't have full video or names. Some of these are phone numbers, so I'm not sure who is with us besides the commissioners who have video. If you can all take a minute just to introduce yourself so we can locate you. Or Sean, do you know who's with us?
No, actually I don't. So I think, let's see, we have Ben Jacob. I'm asking these people to unmute themselves. Helen's here, and Tyler, but I'm not sure who's calling in from IU. And it might be a journalism class.
The 812 number in there is me. My internet's a little touchy, so in case I need to switch to audio, that's why it's there.
Perfect.
Oh. Liz is here.
All right.
Yeah, Ben, do you want to introduce yourself? Oh, there's Ben. Okay.
There we go. Some more videos.
Ben, it doesn't seem like we can hear you, even though you're unmuted.
Okay, let me check.
There you are.
There
Okay.
you are, yep.
Yeah, hey, my name's Ben Jacob. I am a Doctor of Music Composition student, and I met Sean, I think this past February in the Innovation competition here at Indiana University. And so yeah, he was recently in a class on entrepreneurship that I was attending and mentioned that we could attend, so I hope it's okay that I attend.
Yep.
Sean?
Absolutely.
Great, thanks.
We love having members of the public, Ben. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, without anything else,
Oh,
let's
that's
move on.
AJ's here. Hold up. AJ's here. Yep.
Hey, sorry. AJ O'Reilly,
Okay.
community member, I guess. Starting a art supply store in town. So I figured getting deeper rooted with the arts community would be not a bad idea. So I decided to attend this meeting. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully at the end you can give us a little bit more information about what your plans are so that we can start to spread the word.
Sure.
Anybody else?
No, we have Helen and Tyler who are
Okay.
pseudo staff. So they're here in Marnina. So we're good to roll.
All right. Well, you all got the packet from Sean. There's 2 rounds of minutes that we need to go through. The first one is August. Do you have those, Sean?
Yeah, I'm bringing them up. Sorry, my internet is trash today. Let's see. So
Hopefully you all had a chance to review these.
Yeah, and special thanks to Marnina for doing the due diligence on this and getting these updated. So is there any changes to the August minutes or any edits?
All right. I see
Okay.
a lot of heads saying no.
What about September? And then we can approve these and have a motion if nobody has any edits for September.
Any edits for September? More not. Okay. Let's move to approve both August and September minutes. Any seconds?
Second.
All right. We approve the minutes. Everybody's so
Yeah,
quiet.
everybody's got to go around and say their
Yeah.
name and say aye.
Yes, yes.
So Bryony, why don't you do a roll call? Why don't you call on people and then
Okay.
we'll do a vote.
Let's
Yeah.
go to the top.
So,
Valeria,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Elliot,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Essence,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yes.
and I think that's it.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody? Oh,
Elizabeth, sorry, I'm over here.
Elizabeth.
Yes.
I was going by reading the names and showing up as an email instead of name. So
I can't get it to
that.
change for some reason. I'm using my husband's computer and that's not even my email. I'm sorry, I can't get it to turn off.
No worries. Yeah, as I said, I was going by the chat list versus pictures. All right, the next thing on the agenda, I have to switch screens here real quick. The financials, Sean.
No changes from month to month. So we are at, for the public, members of the public that are tuned in the Municipal Arts Fund, which is our leftover or unused monies from our 1% ordinance, we have 61, 635, and 66 cents. And then from the Arts Commission Operating Fund, this is leftover spending that we normally do for sponsorship opportunities or community awards with Ivy Tech. We've used that money before for that. It's out of what we used to make revenue off of postcards from, and that is at $3,961 and 65 cents.
Any questions regarding the financials? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the first item on the agenda with guests, the MFA photography project. We'd love to get an update.
Yeah, I don't know if they're actually joining in. I never heard back from Liz,
All right.
so we might want to let me double check. I'm just scrolling through. Yeah, I thought they were coming back to this meeting, but maybe not.
Do you have
So
an
maybe
update, Sean?
I don't have an update from them.
Okay.
No.
Well, then let's move on to the public art projects, starting with the Trades District, and then just moving on down the list. Nick and Sean, please.
Yeah, I mean, we skipped our committee meeting this month as we didn't have anything super actionable, and people put a lot of time into this trades garage review, and so Sean let finalists know the decision that we made, and Esteban sent us a nice email acknowledging that he was excited to work with us. But aside from that, I'm going to toss it to Sean to give updates on timelines and things like that. Just where we're at.
Yeah, so we have moved to put this project under contract with Esteban Garcia based on the recommendations by the Public Art Planning Committee. We were pretty excited about all of the finalists. It was a really tough decision. In terms of equity and inclusion, just to recap, we had some emerging artists that we threw into the mix and are very excited about their potential and working in the community at some level. And then we also had another local tie-in group, Jeremy Typend, who splits his time between here and New York, and Aurora Robson, which was another collaborative group. We felt that their proposal was very strong, but suited itself to a better location like the convention center, something a little more interactive, a little more public facing. Not that a garage stairwell isn't, but we were touched by Esteban's kind of collaborative approach, his own story around this, and the potential for community input for a project, which we actually haven't, and as long as I've been with the commission, we've done murals that have involved community members, but we actually haven't done a public art, like commissioned a piece that would have some collaborative elements to it. So this is his proposal design, which is kind of these individual tiles that will be CNC'd and milled with a variety of different materials. And so there's a couple different workshops he'll be able to host throughout the community to help design this. So this could be, and it's not just, specifically he's reached out to IU First Nations, but this could also be with Fairview Elementary, or there's no stopping the level of engagement that this kind of has. And Esteban being based out of Purdue means that there's some stronger tie-ins. But we thought that this was a beautiful piece for the site, and in general, just an interesting conversation for us to consider as a public art piece. Before I move on, just on general updates on that, is there any questions based off of this proposal or the Trades District garage itself? And many of you all probably have noticed it's coming together very fast. If you haven't been on 10th Street there, it's coming together. I saw Sam on his motorcycle there almost yesterday, I think, yesterday morning. So we are working on getting them. And the other thing that was also interesting is Esteban has partnered with another fabricator that is on our RFI fabrication list that we haven't worked with before, Weber Group, which is based out of Charleston, Indiana. So once again, lots of regional money being spent, hiring local, hiring within the state, 100% basically on this project, which is really exciting and really important, I think, and was a consideration for the public art panel. But do we have any comments, questions? Nick, I see you and you're waving your hand.
Yeah.
So.
No, I think the only other comment I was going to make is I also think that you know, where we ended up selecting Esteban, I think this is a good sort of success story in that he had submitted for, you know, a previous RFQ, had gone through a process, had interviewed with us, you know, and so I think this is it's a good demonstration of how the process can work. You know, somebody coming back to us, someone engaging, taking feedback from us, and you know, ending up being the right fit for a commission. So kind of related to that, I was curious, you know, not just Esteban, but how did the other finalists take feedback that you provided to them?
I haven't followed through, like having phone calls with them. Obviously, Jeremiah and Aurora, I think understood that you know, you know, Aurora was the finalist for another call, you know, jumping into our call. I think they kind of understood the game. I'm really excited to request the studio visit when it's safe to do that with Jeremiah and kind of tie them in together. And it's the same thing with Esteban. You know, Esteban applied to the Trades District Plaza design and didn't make it through, but we kind of courted him through other kind of facets and kept him posted. He's also involved with a collaborative group with the Paper Pavilion show, which I think also helped inform his practice and kind of get some experience. But this is his first significant large-scale public art installation outside of Lafayette, which is really exciting for us to consider. And then Anna and Maria, Maria is in grad school, so just trying to align schedules and to be able to give feedback to them, which, you know, they have, both of them as a collaborative duo have a lot of promise individually in their career, but also collectively. So we're pretty excited to see where all that goes. But to be honest, with the Paper Pavilions opening and a couple other things going on, I haven't been able to lock in feedback. But I can move on if there's not other questions, or I'm sorry, did somebody speak up?
No, I was just saying, any other questions or comments regarding this before we move on to the next art project?
I'm seeing none. So 4th Street, we should get some updated schematics next week. I'm really excited about that. It's tying there, as some of you all know, there was a little bit of concern because our original design with that of the building was a larger footprint, and then it shrunk and got taller. But Project 1 is fairly confident in its original design and original approach. So we should know more next week. The trade sculpture, Stefan had to redesign a little bit, so it's going to be a little bit smaller, which is actually better for the overall feel of the Trades Plaza. So I should be getting those schematics here soon. Lucas Brown has been helping carry that project to the finish line, which I'm really excited about. People's Park is still on hold. We're on negotiations with the property owners, just kind of reassuring them and reevaluating our typical kind of mural agreements and just making sure everything's in order so that everybody, all parties involved, feel good about that. And then the BCC, which is really the Banneker Community Center, the Black Lives Matter mural is moving forward. We are slated for October 24th for install. If you all are interested, we specifically are looking for volunteers, I believe at between noon and 6. And Banneker has really been kind of leading this effort. I know it just kind of went public maybe today or yesterday on the volunteer. We're trying to be very COVID mindset, so mask and physical distancing. So you do have to sign up, I believe, just because we're working with the health department on that. But we're working with 3 emerging artists. We're really excited about the designs. And I think it's going to be an all-day thing. But once we get some more, I believe I can send out after this meeting the link that Banneker Advisory Council and the Community Center has kind of released in terms of the volunteer. But we're happy to have you, anybody stop by. We're starting as early as 8 a.m. That will be for more of the mechanical layout of the Black Lives Matter. It's going to be in Futura bold, which is pretty consistent with some of the other murals across the community, but each artist is interpreting it differently, and there's some community input and opportunities. So there'll be stencils, and we're trying to make sure that able and non-able-bodied people can be participating, designing it from 1 to 1,000 so that any age can contribute to the mural, and being very thoughtful and considerate of that. As well as, part of the advisory council's task was some very specific policies. I think we can get into this with Karen's section around the strategic plan, but our efforts with equity and inclusion, and just reminding folks of what we have been doing in the past couple of years, but just reminding folks and sticking to some very key indicators about including artists of color, and just being very specific about how our calls are run, making sure they're being equitable. And I stand by what we've been doing over the last couple of years in terms of paying artists even after the RFQ phase, which a lot of cities don't. So just making sure we're following through with equity and inclusion and diversity efforts. So that's a lot to throw at you all. Any questions on that section? Thank you for highlighting that, Bryony.
There you go. All right, no questions. I am assuming there's no other updates in like the 10th Street mural and the Duke building or anything like that.
No, still inching forward on all of those, trying to get a hold of property owners and drafting memos and those kinds of things. So
yeah, that makes sense. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah.
Any questions for Nick or Sean regarding anything else regarding public art? Man, we're moving fast today. All right, let's move on to grants. We have a final report. Is that Rachel or Sean who's going to speak to that?
Yeah, I can lead that, or and Rachel wants to step up. I can't see her on this particular section, but
Here,
this is an older report. Pardon?
I said I'm right here, but go for it, since you've already started.
So obviously COVID has impacted Area 10. This is one of those unique partnerships we saw come through our grant program. So this is, what they've been able to do up until March, and then they've kind of had to reshift. So they're just being very transparent about that and supporting the events that they were able to do in terms of the pandemic. So overall, in terms of a staff report, I was pleased with how they handled this. For Area 10 to even be, this was the first time they came to us for a grant program like this, and we were really excited to see them, especially around aging in place and equity around that, and thinking about individuals that are aging in place, especially in Monroe County. And then, obviously with COVID, the impacts on the elderly community have been pretty severe. So feel free to read through this if you have any questions. I thought they did a pretty good job of explaining where they're coming from. And we've been flexible with not just the BAC grants, but the BUEA grants. Everybody, we've had to be really lenient. And a lot of organizations have pivoted and responded really well and really positively. And we've been very pleased, both from the BUEA side of things and the city staff side of things, on how organizations have continued to provide arts and culture experiences during a pandemic. So
I'm having puppy issues for a moment. They seem to be fighting. All right, let's move on then. Forward grants.
Let's see. So Recovery Forward, we have received 24 applications. One has, as of today, withdrawn. They found funding elsewhere and felt that they wanted to withdraw their application. So it's really 23. We are in the process of, thanks to Tyler, MAA has been very short on practicum experiences with the graduate students. We're including a core of reviewers from the MAA program, which I'm really excited to kind of give them firsthand experience. Elliot and Essence are representing the BAC alongside some BUEA members. And our hope is to get the review panels going this week, starting Friday. And we will present those findings to the BUEA next board meeting, which would be in November. For the recovery forward, so, I mean, we're hoping to have reviews in earlier than that, but the BUEA has to approve, like mass approve the grants we would give out. We've allotted 40,000 roughly for that funding mechanism for fall programming, going into winter programming. We also carved out a little bit of funding specifically for venues. We only had three venues or three organizations that would qualify as a venue apply out of, we have 6 that are eligible. So I'm doing a little bit of homework on why that is, if the grant application just didn't speak to them, or maybe they're just, some are remaining silent just because of COVID restrictions. So I'm doing some due process on that. But the BUA asked that we continue to slot some funding for venues just because they have been tied a little tighter to COVID restrictions and have been trying to do everything safe. And so that's just something for us to consider. We will likely be announcing another grant round from this funding from the BUEA before we announce the recipients of this. So that's something that we will need some BAC representation on the next panel. Elliot and Essence are more than welcome to join, but it would be nice to get some fresh reviewers in just for equity and just for new lenses and new perspectives. And that funding will specifically go towards Q1 of 2021 funding for programming or events, those kinds of things. You know, just trying to shore up arts and culture groups to continue to produce work yeah, that's that.
Hey, Sean, I have not been looped in on literally any of those conversations. And I feel as the current grants chair, I should probably know what's going on. Can you make sure to loop me in on those things?
Yeah, we announced this. I mean, we had a meeting about this. You were on that meeting. That we've been going with what we've announced.
Having another grant on top of the Recover Forward grants we have not discussed, which is great. But I was not involved in any meetings for that.
Or is this the third phase that we?
It's the same third. Yeah,
it's the third.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so
we didn't
any
have
something new.
Happened beyond like it being just a concept, because initially it was just a concept that we threw out in passing in a meeting, but now it sounds like there's been discussion around it that I've been left off of.
No, I mean, this is still BUEA focused and funded. So this has nothing to do with us. We're just assisting with the program. So this is all the BUEA funding that we got in April that has been lined out. And we are assisting with this recovery forward package. So originally it was ESNR, and then we met, had a series of meetings. We laid out that framework, which was like, we called it sustain at the time. The BUEA felt like that the messaging needed to be packaged under recovery forward. So it's all been, so you have not, I'm sorry that you feel like you were left out. We have not met, we have not, this was met, this plan was laid out at that meeting you were at, and then we've carried it as based off of the recommendations moving forward. So that's how this whole year has to shake out.
So it sounds more like our involvement really is in providing reviewers in participating in that versus in setting things up or creating.
And it is, and I'm sorry for the confusion. It was originally, we were thinking different names and all that kind of stuff, but it literally got, per the mayor's request and the BUEA, to be lumped into this whole recovery forward package. So we have, and that's just because we've been with city council and trying to figure out, it's been very confusing, and I'm sorry for everyone involved on that, you know, we have 2020 reversion money with BUEA money, that's recovery forward. Then in 21, we have a separate package of funding that is COVID related. And so there's that. Now, the big thing that the grants committee will be tasked with, if the voting goes well tonight at city council, we do have the budget as an increase of $60,000 for our typical grant program through the BAC. It's not certain that the vote will go through tonight, but we will have a total of $100,000 in the 21 budget that the BAC will oversee next year. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
It would have been great to have known that before. I won't be able to make it tonight to the budget hearing, but it would have appreciated being able to go to that. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, I've been pretty much left in the dark for the past 2 months, it feels like, on grant stuff. So I have no idea what's going on. So appreciate the overview.
I'm sorry. I mean, we haven't had much going on. I mean, the line item, there's not any voting on line items. It's a total package being passed tonight. It either does or doesn't, right? So the review period, you all, I think Rachel and Bryony spoke at the budget hearing where it was being discussed on the line item. So really, this is just the whole city budget packages tonight. So there's no really need for any member of the public to be there. It's just that there's some divisiveness for some reason between city council and some positions that are being added in city hall, mainly the transportation demand. So that's why so I'm sorry that I will do better about keeping you in the loop, but we really haven't had much in terms of meeting or discussing. This was stuff that we laid out earlier in the year based off of COVID response.
Yeah, I'll second that. I have not had any conversations in this matter, and I was actually going to say that their next meeting, which is on Friday for the grants committee, that's when we should really start looping Essence into what the next grant cycle is going to be, so that we can start creating the forms and all of those documents that will be required, and really launch what the BAC will be, independent of if we have $100,000 or less. I think we had talked about starting to kick off that process in October.
Yeah, and actually, for what it's worth, I had a meeting with Gabe Gloden. We discussed a few other potential grant scenarios based on the performing arts and venues and such. But yeah,
we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail regarding the Waldron in a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, I think he included my proposal in his plan, but cool.
All right. Any other questions regarding grants at this point? All right, let's move on to section 6, the strategic plan, which Karen has been shepherding the last couple months. Did you all have a chance to review the document in detail? All right. I know that we have Quentin's kind of blessing to move forward since he cannot be here, but any additional comments? I know, Valeria, you had a comment via email, and if you want to share it with us today.
Yes, thank you. It's just that those two words that strike to me as our objectives to guide, and I don't remember which one was the other one. Guide and enable. For some reason, it sticks to me that if that is really representative of our openness to also more like a facilitate instead of assuming a position of guiding. So that's just what came to my mind, and I just was, yes, like a connect, facilitate, or another use of words. I thought guide and enable was a little bit too strong and pretentious.
Thoughts from others that can respond to Valeria?
I mean, just quickly, I think enable and facilitate mean almost exactly the same thing to me. I think, I don't know, they're probably like the closest you can get in the thesaurus to each other. So I'm kind of agnostic as to which we use. But I mean, otherwise, I feel like it.
Nick, you cut out.
Rachel?
No, I don't have anything.
Oh, I saw you unmute. That's anybody else?
I mean, facilitate sounds more bureaucratic from my connotative perspective. Enable sometimes has negative connotations, but ability, able seems right. It's also a shorter term. I don't know. I'm an editor speaking right now. I love to play with words, so I could talk about this all day.
I'd like to make sure that whatever we do about enable or facilitate, I still think that the word guide, it's something different, but I believe that that's something that we do. I mean, as a commission, I think that's part of our role. So I'd like to keep that regardless of what happens to the other two.
Yeah, I want to say that I didn't express myself. My problem was more with the word guide and enable that I thought that one word as facilitate would include both. But was just an observation. I'm fine with anything, so.
Any additional comments? It seems like one word or the other is okay, from what I gather. All right, so if there are no more comments, let's move to vote to approve the strategic plan for the next 5 years as it stands in this document.
I have a question, Brian.
Yeah.
I see that Ben Jacob in the comments has a thought, or are the community members able to weigh in?
Sean?
Sure, yeah, I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
I was just going to say, I think facilitate has a less of a hands-on connotation than enable. So I don't know what the purpose is, if the intent is to be more hands-on or to be more hands-off. But I just wanted to throw that in.
I love that observation. Personally, I'm the one who wrote the version that stands right now. To me, it's about getting my hands dirty and being in there and actually participating with the community versus making things. Like facilitate, to me, it is also a little bit more bureaucratic than enabling things to happen. And enable feels a little bit more open-ended.
Cool.
All right, well, let's move to approve the strategic plan as it stands for the next 5 years. Any seconds?
Second.
All right, let us vote. Let me go down the list here. Elizabeth,
Yes.
Rachel,
Yeah.
Essence,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Elliot,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Sam,
Yes.
Valeria,
Yes.
and a big yes from me.
Congratulations, y'all.
It only took a year.
Karen, thank you for carrying it to the finish line.
Yes.
I mean, this is a lot of work for you all to be doing, but I'm going to hold you accountable to it. No, I'm just kidding. It's very reasonable. As staff, I think this is very in tune and very in touch. I think it gives you all a good lateral, without being too general in terms of strategic plans, right? It gives you some focus and some ability to maneuver. So congratulations, you all, for doing this.
All right, so based on this, I'm just going to pose a question that I don't need you all to answer right now necessarily, but we do need to kind of divide and conquer, and especially right now that we're all pretty much divided at home and we can't come together. I would love to hear if there's an area of this strategic plan that you would like to focus on moving forward independently, if you're in the public art committee or in the grants committee. I think a lot of what the strategic plan is doing is speaking to all of us, and there's areas that we all have either talents or interests in. So take a look at it in detail from that point of view as to, I want to take on this bullet point or this area, or this is where I feel I can make the biggest difference, and let me know so that I can start to figure out how to apply this strategic plan. And as we've spoken, we're not going to apply it all in 1 month and get it over with. This is a work in progress, and the idea is to apply it over time and grow on it. And especially given the circumstances with COVID, I think it will take us a little longer than originally intended, but I want to respect what you each want to take on as much as possible. All right, so that is that. Nick, regarding plans, can we put the public art master plan back on the docket and start working on that? Not to put you on the spot.
Yes, we absolutely can. Obviously, I've not really given it much thought in the last couple months. Totally backburnered it while Karen did her excellent work on this. So what I propose is I'll find some time here in the next 2 weeks to give that a good look and sort of rethink sort of where we left off in the process and how we might want to pick it up. And I will propose an approach ahead of our next public art committee meeting. Does that work for everybody?
That works for me.
Great.
And also to Nick's leadership as chair, we've had a lot of commissions, frankly, which is not always the case. So we've had a lot of 1% projects, which we've had to get under contract, and so the public art master plan, it's not at anybody's fault, and also my fault as staff. Just RFQs and the timelines, garages, it's actually pretty magical. Almost all the commissions are going to come in at the same time, so that means we're going to have a lot of ribbon cuttings probably teed up together, which is very, very exciting, but also very it can be very overwhelming. So.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, I don't fault anybody in this process. It has been a strange year between all of the work that has been done and is coming in, and just the fact that we're all having to juggle so many things all of a sudden. But I just don't want to forget about it. I want to keep things moving as much as possible. Okay, I think that wraps up any commission items. Unless anybody, oh wait, the Waldron comes up.
Yeah.
Sean, will you talk to the paper pavilions first, and then we'll give the Waldron update?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, it's just the exhibition's open. We've had a really great, lot of great turnout. Frankly, the virtual tour launched last week. If you haven't had a chance, I logged out, but I'll drop it in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to see the virtual tour, I'll be there next Friday if anybody's interested. So just trying to do one-on-one tours. We had some people from Sycamore Land Trust there yesterday, which was really exciting to see their interest and involvement with the show, which was pretty exciting. And then the other big news here, I'll introduce you all to the newest family member. This is the new puppy that's going to be dominating my life for the next little while. So anyhow, that's the big staff report. More puppies on Zoom videos, please. But we had a really good, next week we'll also have a panel discussion with 3 of the artists and the Sycamore Land Trust, and lining up a couple others things around the Paper Pavilion show. We were featured on All In Indiana last Friday with Joanne Quinonia's and Rachel Cavate's work. And then I believe Limestone Post is doing some kind of either exhibition review. So the works are really exciting. And it's great that all the artists get all the hype for it, which is really great. So that's the Paper Pavilions update. And then we can jump right into the Waldron. There's not a whole lot to report. Like I said, we're waiting on City Council to approve the budget for 21, which has allotted funding for the Waldron at bare bones, just to try to figure out kind of the behind the scenes. Some of you all may know that Cardinal, BAFT, BPP have put together a proposal. The city is going to review that. That just came in last week. So there's no decisions been made. I think it's important for you all as commissioners to remind folks that we are not going any particular direction, and no matter what we do, it's going to be a public process. So I'm really grateful that Cardinal, BPP, BAFT was able to come together and leverage a variety of different support, but that doesn't solely mean we're going that direction, and it doesn't mean we're not going that direction, right? It's a very enticing proposal. We still have a lot of due diligence to do on the building, but it's really important that the public is reassured that there's no quick, fast decision around this. So just so you know, we're still doing our due diligence on that. And I believe tonight, if the funding goes through, there should be, the mayor will be announcing some kind of task force to be involved on that. Brian, do you have something?
Yes, I was just quieting my kid that was coming in. No, but as you know, I try to liaison as much as we can with Arts Forward Bloomington and the Bloomington Arts Alliance, and through Arts. So Gabe and the whole team behind this proposal reached out to Arts Forward Bloomington to get their support based on their proposal. Ken Buzzard, who is the president of Arts Forward Bloomington, is undisposed right now, so I offered to help them launch a little presentation by Gabe with a Google form that I'll add the link into the chat right now, so that people could provide a yes, I support this, I don't, any ideas or needs that they would look for in such a venue. So they've been getting very good feedback, and if anybody said, no, I do not support this, they had to answer why. So it's been interesting to see what information is coming through. They've received, I believe, about 35 responses so far, and they were kind of moving this quickly because they wanted to get as much feedback before sending the proposal to the city. So they're moving through with that. You can see the summary presentation. He tried to make it under 10 minutes at the link that I'll be providing. And I know he mentioned earlier today that there was a conversation with Rachel regarding some grant stuff. So Rachel, if you can speak to that possible idea.
You want me to speak to it now, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had like a 1 to 2 hour call with Gabe, and we talked. I mean, this was a couple weeks ago, but discussed everything Bryony mentioned and everything that's in that presentation. And something that at least they're really aware of with the Waldron space is being aware that the Buzzkirk is also a space that they want to continue to use. And so they're working on partnering with the BCT. And they're also really conscious of the fact that, you know, how the BCT has their startup grants, how to make a space affordable for local performers, individuals, not necessarily arts organizations, that want to put on performances. In order to make that more readily available, they want to be able to have lower rental costs. So for those that can't necessarily afford the BCT or don't get the startup grant for the BCT, they'll have access hopefully to the Waldron, or even the Bloomington Playwrights Project space, just different venues in town, and possibly partnering actually with the BCT on sort of this type of general performance, depending on what our funding looks like this year or next year, I guess. Looking at, you know, we have our operating support, and we have our individual artist support or project grants that individual artists can apply to. But since we have so many performing arts organizations and individuals that tend to want to present performing arts programming, looking at creating potentially a sort of like sub grant. So having an operating support grant and then a presenting organization grant, if you will, for performance, not necessarily theater, could be music, whatever. And and having then the individual project and allowing that funding to be used for people to essentially subsidize rent of different venue space in town. So it was just a conversation that we had. Obviously, nothing is set in stone because it's the first time I'm even bringing it up to you all. And it's something the grants committee has to talk about. And I mean, a lot of it is going to depend on what happens to the Waldron space and how much funding we actually end up having. But I think it is potentially an interesting role for us to play when it comes to sustaining operations within venues, especially as like rentals going to be really interesting in the coming years, and encouraging people to program within the variety of spaces and making it affordable. So yeah.
Yep. What I find interesting and why I wanted you to speak to it too is just the fact that we do have 3 theater companies basically coming together. And one is they're reaching out to the community to get more input and ideas, which I think is interesting and novel based on history. And then the other is whatever ends up happening, if we go with them, if the city chooses a different path, whatever ends up happening, the BAC should keep whoever is in charge accountable to make sure that we're representing all of the different artists that could use that space, not just performing. What other uses are for those spaces? If there's a gallery, for example, which is an important part right now, making sure it meets the requirements for gallery walk, and what flexibility can that space have to fulfill other needs. And I think that should be one of our main roles moving forward as we advise and kind of oversee what's happening with the community involvement.
Yeah, and I think if anyone has a chance to actually go through that presentation and look through the slides, I highly suggest that you do, obviously. But speaking to having 3 organizations working within that space to help program, I think another really interesting aspect is their proposal for renovation of the space. So looking at what they're hoping to do in order to upgrade it, they're looking at a hopeful partnership with the Cook Group to fund a $3 to $5 million renovation of the building. And if that does happen, if they do get awarded the space long-term lease from the city, I think that, since the city wouldn't necessarily be supporting financially in terms of a renovation of the space, that we should be able to contribute to at least the access or help facilitate the access of that, enable the access to the space for other arts organizations. They're looking at turning the auditorium into soundproofing a bit more, creating a dance floor so it's easier for dancers to use. So I think just keeping all of that in mind and knowing that if they do have a long-term lease, they would also be investing a lot into that space. So thinking about how we can look at investing long-term in the actual use of it.
Any questions, comments regarding the Waldron? All right. And do you want to add anything?
I'd like to add a few things that we should consider just as commissioners, and just as you all kind of go out in the community too and think through this. We don't know when we're going to get out of this, right? 21, from the city's point of view, financially, the year 2021, we're going to be okay. Beyond 21, cities across the US are going to be hit in a variety of different ways. So that is something to consider too, that this level of support that we have going into 21, this 100,000 for potentially for the BAC grants, might not be feasible, right? And if we're also managing the Buskirk Chumley and the Waldron, that might impact our grants. It's just something to think about, that not that we're gonna be cutting any kind of budget, but that money has to go somewhere and come from somewhere, right? We also, it's a 100-year-old building, and I'm not speaking on the behalf of the city, I'm just saying the reality of the situation. And I really wish Joanna was with us, because she's very good at studying nonprofit spaces and the realities of nonprofit management of spaces. It is a 100-year-old building that has been retrofitted multiple times and has lived this life cycle more than once. So the community is, while it's really exciting, and I understand that Cardinal and those folks have a variety of donors that are interested in that, this has happened before. So some community members, I think, are a little bit scared about this falling apart again. And not saying that Cardinal, and I'm not saying that about anybody, I'm just saying the reality of the situation is this is a 100-year-old building. It has good bones, but the financial structure, that I think we're going to have a real long, hard look conversation about capacity and use across the community, thinking through those things and what that looks like. And I think the commission is going to be tasked with that going into 21, into 22. So just being mindful of that. And I really appreciate Rachel's meeting with Gabe and thinking through other granting and how we can think about next year is really important. But start to have those thoughts and just think about how there is going to be no return to normal once this is all over too. So for us to really think and get into that headspace about like, what are the things that didn't work before, why they didn't, but also what are the things we need to be involved in, or what are the creation of things that need to happen to sustain the arts in Bloomington, frankly. Because it's not looking hopeful. I mean, we still don't even have a second round of federal funding coming down, right? We don't have additional support structures. I will say I'm very happy in terms of some grants. I'm very happy that we had 21 organizations receive money from the Indiana Destination Development Grants. That's huge. We had $360,000 pour into the community because of that. But also Region 8 funding has not been as competitive as it should be. So making sure that we are reminding folks to get IAC funding, those kinds of things, and shoring up organizations to be competitive in that sense. Because historically, the turnout for that grant cycle has been very low, and the competition has not been there in the way that it should be. So just those are some things to kind of consider as a group.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is denying that it's going to be difficult financially moving past 2021. And I also don't think that this would be a grant that would, replace any of the existing grants. We've discussed this for the past 3 years of really encouraging everyone as in artists and arts organizations to be applying to the state and other federal funding in order to offset what we're able to provide. What I'm trying to propose is that we should be thinking about the Waldron's use, whether or not it's owned by Cardinal, BPP, or whoever's managing it, whether it's a nonprofit or whomever. We should have a role in helping the community actually have access to it. And I think that having a potential performing arts grant or some sort of grant that could be applied to that space, not necessarily like a Waldron grant or whatever, but I think that in Friday's grant committee meeting, I think it would be interesting for us to discuss the possibility of creating a grant that actually helps facilitate the use of that space and the access of that space to a broader community, so it doesn't end up being just performances by Cardinal, BPP, and BAFT if they're the three that end up managing the space. So that's what I'm getting at, is I would like us all to be thinking about, no matter who manages the space, how do we make sure that others who are not necessarily managing that space able to access it? And I think that having some sort of grant could be a option to help with that.
In the proposal, they acknowledge the use of the community using the space, and they speak a little bit about how it might work. They haven't worked out all of the logistics, but they know that a lot of the feedback that they have received is exactly that. Sounds great, but can I use the space as well? And am I going to get, the blackout dates that nobody wants while you get all the good ones, or how is that going to work? So there is a lot of questions about how that would work, and the community is putting them on the spot on it. So again, whoever ends up with a space depends on if they're a performing group or if it's more of a management group like the BCT. Sean, do you know if the BCT has sent in a proposal or if they are not?
No, they have not. We didn't ask for anybody to send in a proposal. Cardinal had a donor that mentioned that when we let them run with that. We did ask Mark Levin's capstone class to do a feasibility study for the Waldron. So we have some graduate students with policy and finance backgrounds looking at the feasibility of, running a space and what that could look like. So Mark Levin's class is doing a proposal, but that's just to get kind of a vision of what's possible. You know, I know a lot of people have a lot of opinions about how to make that space function, right? Mark Cheetah is one who knows that building intimately and will give you a million ideas of the direction we should go. But also there's some other, you know, resources that thanks to Tyler's work, back end work with some surveys, you know, thinking about joint office space, what that looks like. So we are hopefully, creating a task force that will make a recommendation, you know, to the city about the future of the Waldron, and that might be an RFP phase. I mean, we did that with Lotus, just for newer commissioners. That was an old firehouse that we sold them for $1, but it was a very open, competitive process. It was very well thought out. And it's not something that we can do overnight. I understand that, Cardinal's rationale, which is very understandable, is that because we are in this like great pause, that now would be the time to do the renovations versus clawing out of this thing and then trying to do renovations. We at the city totally understand the timing of that, but the reality of us doing our due diligence with taxpayer funded dollars and being good stewards of the building, because there's also a lot of frameworks that weren't necessarily discussed in that proposal that are important, like WFHB. There's a lease rent agreement that is pretty significant for WFHB's.
It's mentioned.
But it's pretty specific in terms of how they get corporate broadcasting funding because of their rent being subsidized, which is a $30,000 subsidy, right? So there's some realities in terms of finances that we have to look long and hard at. I think it's also important to keep in mind, just for newer commissioners and the public to, Rachel brought this up, but we do support the BCT $50,000 annually. And that doesn't come from our budget, it comes from city council. And the original intention of that money is to help foster and subsidize local acts to use the stage, which it's used for. And that's how the Arts Startup Program was started under Danielle McClellan, the former director. Jonah has been interested. I'm a new staff board overseer of the BCT. So, Jonah's obviously getting kind of the wind under his sails, so to speak. He started his job March 14th at the Buskirk Chumley, 2 days after sheltering in home. So, he's trying to figure out what the capacity issues and the professional development opportunities are as well. So there's a lot of different moving parts, obviously. And so,
and I actually am meeting with Jonah in the next couple weeks for a call, and I'm pretty sure this is on the table of discussion that he wants to talk about. So if there's anything specific anyone would like me to kind of put in front of the BCT, let me know.
And if you haven't, please reach out to Jonah. He just moved here looking for, and I know it's weird in terms of digital Zoom space, but for you all to get to know him, I mean, the BCT is a huge asset. It's definitely an interesting model because we own the building, but they manage it for us. That has definitely been entertained in terms of thinking about the future of the Waldron, but the feasibility we just got to look at, so.
Yeah, and Sean, I would just ask that you keep us in the loop of any other major developments like this proposal by Cardinal, BAFT, and BPP. Which we were privy to, but if there's other things that we should be looking at and familiarizing ourselves with, please do let us know.
And after this meeting, I can send out the full packet. I actually just got it yesterday, so I didn't send it out because I know, Brian, you sent it out under Arts Board, so I assumed everybody had seen it, but I'll make sure that everybody can have access to it. And we'll definitely keep posted on the Mark Levin class. And like I said, after tonight, that will trigger some things on our behalf in terms of like some kind of task force around the future of the Waldron.
Yeah, and just to clarify, I help them reach out to Arts Forward Bloomington, so whomever is on their list are the people who got it. I did not send it to the entire commission and other people outside. It was their mailing list. It was just, they were not getting it done quickly enough because of extenuating circumstances within their group. And the only way to do it was like, okay, let's just get it done.
What I can do is I'll upload it to this folder for this meeting, just so everybody has access to it easily, rather than another email. So just check on this here in the next, by tonight, and it should be in there.
Perfect, thank you.
No, I have a question. So are we accepting proposal submissions, or just this has been free, and if somebody wants to submit a proposal like the Cardinal did, how is that working? It would be a official submission of proposals for this matter of the Waldron?
Well, so this was kind of unprecedented. We've never, it's not often we get handed back a building, right? So Cardinal felt the need because of, I think, a couple different things. One, to keep donors interested during these dark and uncertain times, but then also the livelihood of a lot of arts organizations are tied to the Waldron. So the future of that is really important. So making sure, and the kind of history and the legacy of the city owning buildings is by public opinion questionable, right? So I think the future has not been determined. We are going to review it, but we also have to go through a very public process no matter what we do with the Waldron. So there still will be a public process. We don't actually own the building yet still. Ivy Tech still owns the building. The likelihood of us taking ownership of the building in 2020 is not likely. So the transfer might not even happen until January of 21. But there's also some challenges with lease agreements and those kinds of things with the WFHB, and there's some deed restrictive elements to the building as well. There's an FCC regulated tower that's on the Waldron, those kinds of things, and it's subject to historic preservation. So at the time, we are not soliciting any kind of proposals from anyone, but we are Cardinal had an opportunity and has a bird in the hand, and we wanted to see what that looked like. So we told them to go pursue that, right? But there will be a public process, and I'm sure I can 100% guarantee you all that the Art Commission will be involved no matter what we do.
Perfect.
Valeria, do you feel like that answered your question?
Yes, it does answer my question. I was just, it's my personal wish that more youth places would be open and more opportunity for youth, young people. So, and I was wondering if any institution or any, if you know anybody in town that may represent, or like we had rhinos before, something in this direction, I don't know. But I didn't know if would be a place for start talking to people and like, oh, there is this open opportunity, or if this is something that we should wait and just until we have a more clear idea. So that's.
Great, thank you. That's a good point, yeah.
I would say wait at this point and see what the city, first, when things start to actually happen. As Sean said, I think this proposal came in because they are on fire and trying to figure out how to stay afloat and how to, keep their businesses running. And so they got together and talked it out and were very proactive instead of waiting for the city to call on the citizens to say, okay, this is what we know, this is what we've reviewed, this is what we're looking for, these are the ideas or the options that we have. They jumped that gun and went straight for it, which is great, and we get to talk about it. But I think at this point we hit the pause button, have that awareness and that understanding, and wait to see what the city starts to come up with. Anything
I think
else?
we should somehow have some sort of grants or something to help make that space accessible, and that is why I.
Yeah, but to an extent,
is whoever ends up in that space, even if it's an all ages club. Sorry.
Yeah, but to an extent, we have to know a little bit. I mean, is it guaranteed that the space will remain as a cultural center?
Right, but I do think that it's worth us looking at that now rather than waiting and playing catch up later.
Yeah, no, in that regards, yes. Yeah, but the possibilities in a way are endless as to when and how this is going to play out. how we can support it, yes, we can have that on the ready and be proactive as well. But I just want to make sure that we're managing our resources and our time wisely and not, assuming anything, because the city, as Sean says, doesn't even own the building yet. So a lot can change.
And I do want to say, just for the clarity of the commission and everybody involved, just so we're all on the same page about this, the Waldron as it is a key critical arts infrastructure, period. So that's a mindset that we have to answer. Like, we have to keep in mind that until there's something else, the Waldron is it. But, so it's a little bit in terms of like good, bad timing, all that kind of stuff. Cardinal Stage, BPP, Stages Bloomington, Jewish Theater Bloomington, Echo Dance Company, Triple ADS, a ton of organizations use the Waldron, and it is key infrastructure. So that that is just something to keep in mind for all of us, that no matter what, it's not like we can just say the Waldron, it's not going to work out because finances or whatever. It's key infrastructure. Cardinal's attached to that identity. So it's important for us to keep that in mind.
All right. Any other comments, questions, suggestions regarding the Waldron? Okay, let's go back to the agenda here real quick. Okay, so the last thing that I have is a little bit tied again to the strategic plan, and it's just trying to figure out what are our goals to wrap up the year. We're in October, we have 2 more meetings, and anything that we want to set up towards the next 6 months of, January through June. Besides, obviously, the public art commissions that are happening and contracts and all of that, is there anything that the BAC wants to accomplish before the end of the year? Nothing. All right. Well, Nick.
Obviously, the public art master plan that we already talked about, whether it's fully finished by the end of the year, I think we should probably have a first meeting and set a timeline from that. But, I'd like to at least make some good initial progress on it. I think I know going back to the strategic plan, Brian, you posed the question to everyone to think about, which of those goals, which of those objectives do people want to, personally put themselves towards. I do just want to flag that, there are a few things on there that I think are right now, sort of outside of what has been our remit for the last couple of years. And so I think identifying those things and us really thinking about what sort of structure, whether it's, committees or, people assigned as chairs for things or, deputized with titles or whatever. I do think we should aim to apply some structure to this, because there's some things right now, social media and, quarterly meetings and hosting sessions, things like that, that if we're serious about that, I think we should dig on it right away. Because otherwise it could, just sort of sit there as a daydream for a while. That's just my 2 cents.
Yes. Anybody else want to say anything? All right. That is basically what I would like to accomplish by the end of the year in the next 2.5 months. And it is just kind of trying to figure out, January 1st, kind of hit the ground running in terms of starting to apply the strategic plan in the long term. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of things in here that are not going to happen in the first year, or maybe in the second year. It will ease into all of these. So if you can all give me that feedback as to what you would like to be involved with, I can come back at the next meeting with a proposal as to how we can structure it or how we can start to apply this in a more tangible way, if that works for everybody. All right. I think that wraps up that. Okay. Commissioner announcements. Anybody have anything to share with us today? All right. One new message. Let's see.
Oh, that's Marnina being amazing and behind the scenes thing, and dropping the link.
All right.
Great,
the
Rachel,
only-
tell us about Midway.
Yeah, how did that go?
Did a virtual festival. Nick, I know Nick attended. I don't know if anyone else did, but yeah, we had a week-long festival with a few hundred people buying tickets and participating in panels and concerts for an entire week. And I got no sleep, but it happened and it was really great. And a lot of the artists really want to come back to Bloomington, or actually like come to Bloomington, I guess not back to Bloomington, in person. And yeah, they did Q&As. Well, Nick, you were watching the Kadya set, right? Yeah, so Kadya did a Q&A afterwards, which was pretty cool. And so did Kaina and Madison McFerrin. But yeah, what a trip to do a virtual festival with at least 21 different events happening in a single week. It was wild. But I'm now a pro at streaming software, so hit me up if you have questions.
Yeah, from what I gathered on social media, it was looking awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, we got some really, really good feedback from a lot of the artists and managers and booking agents that participated that want to work with us again in the future, which was really great. And from a lot of attendees that, like, even though, I mean, I had to use Secretly Group's internet because my Wi-Fi was too slow, and I was set up in the conference room with like 3 computer monitors and 2 laptops or whatever, and like we were, as chaotic as it was on the back end, everyone said on the front end it looked super professional, so that was very nice, especially since we had to pivot a few months beforehand. So yeah, thank you. Thanks to everyone that attended out there in the world.
Any other announcements? All right, I'll share that starting January, I'll be on the board for the Dimension Mill for the next 3 years or so. So you can hit me up over there as well. And let's move on to members of the public, if you have anything to say that you want to share with us today. Nope. AJ, do you want to say anything?
I can. I can. I wasn't intending to, but I certainly can. Well, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm AJ O'Reilly. I moved to Bloomington in 2008 just to get a BFA in graphic design and haven't left since. So here I am. I just finished my master's. And when Pygmalions announced their closing, being an art student in Bloomington, sort of Pygmalions was wrapped up in the identity of that experience. And so my wife and I quickly decided that Bloomington without an art store seems like a very strange idea. So we quickly decided to start one. So we are starting an art store called Griffey's Art Supply. And yeah, working really hard to get that up and running and in sort of in town and open for the public. COVID has made it very interesting to start a physical retail business in town. But it's been fun nonetheless. So we have established a relationship with the university because that's sort of where I have a lot of relationships. And so now we're sort of starting the process of starting and building relationships with the community and figuring out what people want in an art store in town. We are in, if you know where the old original Yulzing space was, we are going to be in that space. So that's our way of establishing an actual physical footprint in town. While it being small, it's sort of a start and we'll get there. Sam, I hope you weren't the ones that painted the walls deep purple, but I'm in the process of painting over that deep purple now and sort of fixing up that space a little bit so it's not, so it's something presentable, and we'll have your typical art supplies. So if anybody has questions or needs anything in terms of that stuff, we're sort of here to help and want to be a place in the community just like Pavilions was. So yeah.
Anna's studio is right next door.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
My
So
suggestion is if you could have film available for cameras, that would be great because there's no good place to get film in this town.
that's good to know. And so we will, one of the things that I do want to do so our goal is actually to open to the public mid-January sometime. And so in the meantime, what I'm hoping to do is sort of reach out to the community and ask just that, like, what type of supplies do you wish you could get? Things that you can't either order online or is not easy. I know paper being one of them. That's just kind of a pain to get printmaking paper. So that's one that we'll have. I bought 9 flat files from surplus, so we will stock a good supply of paper. So in the meantime, what we can do is we can do custom ordering. So if you remember what layaway was, it'd be something similar to that. So we can order things custom ahead of time. And if you can wait a couple weeks, we can get them delivered and get supplies that people need. So yeah, that's a good suggestion though. Thank you.
AJ, will you put your contact information into the chat so that anybody can reach out to you?
Yes, I can.
I'll be sure to, AJ, I'm sure you've reached out to like Jane Cooper Smith with small business development director here at the city. And, perfect timing to open a business really in terms of that type of business model. But I think there's a lot of support both within the state and within the city that we can kind of point you to too. So just make sure I'll close the loop on that.
Perfect. And I just dropped my email. So if anybody has anything, words of encouragement or ideas would be fine. So
AJ, we've talked a little bit about it, but did you ask Pavilions why they went out of business?
Yeah. So we actually, the first thing that we did was actually approach the owners of Pavilions, who, if you know John, who was the late owner, his sister. So the Pavilions went into his trust. And so it was managed by his sister who lived in Tulsa and managed by the trust. So we actually reached out to them because we were interested in just buying Pavilions' name. The brand is so strong in Bloomington. And obviously, I mean, that's the reason why we wanted to do it. It didn't work out for us for financial reasons. Pavilions in general, I know one of the biggest things there was a lot of updates that needed to happen with that company. I know they had their inventory system on an old like dot matrix computer. So they needed to do a lot of upgrades. And so there was capital that needed that way. And then also their rent was going to go up quite a bit. And I think that was the main driver. In addition to, I think John, from what we heard, John was interested in selling it before he passed the business. So it wasn't something that his sister was wanting to really continue on. And it just sort of, with the building and the rent going up and COVID and everything like that, they just felt it better to sort of let it rest, I guess.
Wow. Good speed to you. And we'll keep us in the loop, and anything that we can do to help you, let us know.
Yeah.
Any other comments from anybody? All right. Sean, any last words? Nope. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll adjourn this meeting, and we will see you all next month.